So Victor Wembanyama finally had his first major performance in the NBA, scoring 38 points against the Phoenix Suns, managing to beat the Phoenix Suns despite a late game push when they did have Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, so it's not quite the same as when it was just KD and they beat them the other day. This was a fantastic performance from Victor Wembanyama, obviously, but what I find really interesting about it is how much it highlights truly the simplistic nature of Victor Wembanyama's game and how easy it is to utilize him. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference on how the video performs in the YouTube algorithm. Now, the biggest issue that I have had with the San Antonio Spurs to start this year, and trust me, it's the Spurs and they're still not that great right now, although I think they are 3-2 at this point, but my biggest issue as a whole has been that they have not done a great job of finding Victor Wembanyama. Now, this isn't to say that it's wholly everyone else is on the team's fault, but I do feel as though the effort to get him the ball has not been amazing, and it definitely felt like there was much more of an emphasis for that in this game. And you saw that with Jeremy Sochan probably having easily the best game he has had as a quote-unquote point guard. Now, I don't think Jeremy is a point guard. Like, he just isn't. I think you're trying to, fit a square peg in a round hole with that one. But at the end of the day, he is someone who has good passing chops, and you do hope that he can at least find obvious opportunities, and that hasn't necessarily been the case. Not a lot of great entry passes for Wemby so far, not a lot of finding him when he's open around the rim, which is often because it's pretty hard for him not to be open, and that has yielded mixed results in terms of his point production to this point. But if you watch this game, almost all of his points came from either Jeremy Sochan or Trey Jones throwing up a lob pass to him around the rim. Now, not necessarily lob in the sense of it ending in an alley-oop dunk, but throwing it high so that Victor is the only one that can conceivably reach the ball, and then he gets the ball and immediately puts it in the basket. And he has a truly uncanny ability. Obviously, his length super helps them in this department, but just because you have that length doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be super adept to making quick decisions in terms of going up. But he goes up super quick. He knows his angles really well, and ultimately, if you throw a guy that tall a pass around the rim and he's not going to bring the ball down for the smaller players to swipe at it, and he can just go up with it super fast and find his spot super fast, that's going to result in a ton of easy offense, and that's where Wemby got most of his offense in this game. Hit a couple of three-pointers, got a couple of free throws, but outside of that, it was pretty much just lobs around the rim or finding him in transition and setting him up for rather easy finishes around the rim. When you have Victor Wembanyama's height, Victor Wembanyama's length, and you have his, again, that ability to just go up super fast and find the spot super fast, a lot of the time he has a split second to look at the rim before he's going up with it, and he's still putting the ball where it needs to be. That type of ability, you can just walk into 20 points if your offense is properly looking for that player and looking for those opportunities, because it's a pretty fucking unstoppable play. Phoenix looked particularly helpless for a lot of this game because there was just nothing they could do to stop those entry passes. Very often there was a switch happening, or even if there wasn't a switch, he's still taller than the big men that would be checking him. He got, I think it was Drew Eubanks a couple of times. One of them, this was less a lob type situation, but just a post entry pass. He immediately turned his shoulder and went up with his left hand on the other side of the rim. Did that so quickly, and there was just no way that Drew had any chance of contesting that. So the way that the Spurs utilized him in this game really maximized that finishing ability that he has. Overall, other than the three-pointers that he hit, I think he hit a mid-range shot. I think he hit 2 mid-range shots. He hit a shot that bounced in over Eric Gordon on the baseline, and he hit a mid-range shot free throw line extended at the very end of the game. But other than that, basically all those lob passes. Now, he attempted other shots. In the case of this game, he missed quite a few mid-range shots. I would say probably like 7 or 8 missed mid-range shots in this game. A lot of them pull-ups over Kevin Durant. I think Wemby is going to be a fantastic mid-range shooter. I think that's a shot he should keep shooting. But there were a couple of times in this game where it certainly felt like it was like, damn, that was the best shot you could get there. Definitely something that you would hope him to be able to get a little bit more space, given that he is Victor Wembanyama. There were a couple of times where it's like, I feel like I've seen you do moves to get more space than this, but you're just like, fuck it, I'm tall. And I get that has worked plenty of times, but especially when you're matched up against Kevin Durant, you can't quite rely on it to just be an immediate cheat code. You got to do a little bit of work to get some separation, even if you do have a ridiculous release point. So he missed a bunch of mid-range shots in this game, again, other than those 2 that I mentioned, but he still got 38 with not that much self-creation. Most of his buckets were assisted, and most of his buckets were pretty easy. So I hope San Antonio learned a lesson from this game. And honestly, if they keep taking the approach that they did in this one, there's a good chance that Victor is going to be a better scorer out of the gate than we initially thought, because like he's already a ridiculous finisher. I realize that could maybe come across as something that's like fairly obvious, like, wow, the guy that's 7'3" with an 8-foot wingspan is pretty good at finishing. But you know, we've seen guys who are tall and long like this, who maybe not quite to the extent that Wemby is, but don't necessarily finish all that strong, especially because they don't have all that much meat on their bones. But like Wemby is basically playing like Michael Jordan and hitting that game winner in Space Jam. It's like, what are you gonna do? Go get the ball all the way over here. You're probably not gonna do it. That's the overarching point that I got here. As for the game as a whole, beyond Wembanyama's performance, Devin Vassell was absolutely cooking in the first half, but I guess he got injured. I don't know if I saw that, but he only played 16 minutes, so I gotta presume that's why. And he definitely didn't foul out. Trey Jones had a really good game off of the bench. As I mentioned earlier, Jeremy Sohan, easily the best he has looked playing point guard. Still don't believe that's his role. I think how his playmaking should be utilized should be, you know, very Draymond-esque in terms of like him rolling to the basket and making decisions with the ball in his hand, or maybe using him as a playmaking hub at the top of the key. But, you know, Jeremy Sohan running a pick and roll as the ball handler, I just don't think that's it. I don't think it's really going to work out in the long run. Maybe occasionally, but as like your primary source of initiating your offense is just a bad idea. Another thing I want to highlight, I did mention Devin Vassell was going off. He also appears to be a much better finisher than he was in his previous season. Last year, his jump shot was amazing, and from mid-range and from 3, and like well above league average on high volume in both of those areas. But when it came to finishing at the rim, really did not handle any level of contact well, and also didn't even really showcase all that much ability to like avoid contact to actually make the shot. Like no kind of like super fancy layups or anything like that. Just pretty bare bones finishes that were really only going to work if there wasn't a strong contest. But he had a couple of nice finishes in this one, a couple of ones where he angled his body to get the right angle to make the shot. So that's an encouraging sign from him. A very good game from Seti Osman off of the bench, hit a couple of big pull-up threes. On Phoenix's end of things, I would argue that they didn't play too terrible out of the gate, and it was more so the Spurs just absolutely cooking. But as I previously mentioned, they just had no answer for what Victor was doing to them. And I do think that, you know, to a degree or another, that's going to be the case for everybody. Not really having a strong answer for that. However, it definitely felt like it's like Drew Eubanks is the best you can throw at Wemby. That's not exactly ideal. You know, when he was taking a jumper, Kevin Durant did a great job guarding him, but otherwise not all that much. So I have a lot of concerns about Phoenix, as I've expressed plenty of times. Losing back-to-back to the Spurs, I know it was just Kevin Durant the first time, but you also didn't necessarily get a great Spurs performance the first time, and you still lost that one. So I do hope that they can get Bradley Beal back sooner rather than later, so we can actually see what this team looks like. I did see a clip of Bradley Beal on Twitter of him shooting around in the Suns locker room, in the Suns practice facility, and did not look good. Like, by that I mean he looked like he was super injured and like shooting jump shots through the pain, and I'm hoping that that's not actually the case and he's going to be back sooner rather than later. But I don't know. Phoenix has started the season off 2-3 now, I believe. It's not ideal, but I'm not going to be too concerned out of the gate. I know everyone likes to press the panic button immediately, which I know is ironic given last episode on the podcast, which you should check out, by the way. But yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Victor Wembanyama is awesome. So many people like tried to act like he's not awesome, and it's so annoying and dumb and like antithetical to the actual enjoyment of basketball. But you know, that's just one man's opinion. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, and goodbye.